All right, in the book The Forgotten Spurgeon by Murray, it's not an autobiography like that. It was gonna be like starting from how he was raised to when the day he died. But it's more about controversies that happened in his ministry and how he was very involved in them. And so, starting in the first one, when he was a young preacher in his early 20s in Park Street, he was very adamant that the church should hear the full gospel of God, and that they were not hearing it. They didn't care, that they didn't really care to know all the doctrinal truths, and he would share it. And he wasn't popular for doing that. People didn't like him, but the place was still packed, and but many in the evangelical world at that time did not like him for sharing those things, and he just felt as though it was like that is straight from the Bible and the truths, and he really believed in the Puritans, so that really shaped his thinking. And but he's also he makes a point that in the book that he did shows that he didn't like hyper Calvinism either, and that he thought it was very very unbiblical to believe that there's nothing on our part to do, because Spurgeon would share, the fact that we need Christ and the fact that man cannot do this, and that we need God. He would share that in our hopeless condition in his messages. So he disagreed with the hypercalvinism, and he also very much disagreed with Arminianism. There's a quote in the book that says, "I believe that very much of current Arminianism is simply ignorance of gospel doctrine." So he was very adamant against Arminianism, and he thought it was very much against Scripture to believe in that, and that Arminianism basically was the belief that man has his own free will in regards to salvation, and that it's up to him whether or not, saying that the guy's just waiting around for our acceptance. And there's a quote like that somewhere in the book where he says that God is that God would be so patiently waiting, like that is not right. And so he was very adamant against that. Thought that was not from Scripture, and to believe that was sin. He even says in some parts, and there are many people that thought he was crazy. Like there's a good few pages where it talks about all these pastors and people, just quotes from them saying that, I don't, if I were to believe in God, I would definitely not believe in Spurgeon's God, because that one does not exist, because is Calvinist. Yeah, Spurgeon was a Calvinist, believing that was very much the theology of the Bible. And then the last controversy, the downgrade, the baptism of regeneration, ties into the first one as well. We're talking about how he believed God regenerates man, and that was very important, and that baptism was not to be infant baptism like practiced in the Roman Catholic Church. And so yeah, he held to his convictions firmly in those two, and the third one even more so. In the downgrade controversy, he in the late 1880s to near to his death, he started to see that the Baptist denomination didn't care about doctrines. Like, they were being more liberal, and they didn't seem to care. So he left the Baptist Union at that time, and he had very little followers. Like, people did not follow him. He, at one point in the beginning, it says there was, up to 10,000 services, and they couldn't bring everyone in. And towards the end of his life, when he left for the laying out the baptism, like, he had no followers. He had very little, and that just shows that, what he believed to be true. Like, people were not dying to hear doctrine; they were dying to hear what they wanted to hear. And he was very adamant that doctrine was important throughout his whole life. Through all these three controversies, doctrine was very important. And then, so he was important to Baptist history because of the fact that he made it very clear that doctrine is important. Like, not we can't be defined, like it says in the book also, but what we believe on baptism. This shouldn't be the backbone of a church. We'll be defined by what we believe about God, and not just one ordinance. And that he made that very important. He showed that true doctrine of God is what should define us as churches, and that is why he's important to Baptist history. Doctrine, hugely important for him. It was a great book, and He died in 1892, I believe, and the country last controversy went on, bashed him.